iRacing 2025 Season 4 update is out and brings a lot of new things, new content, and also new utilities. In terms of content, we have a new track, the Autódromo Puellos Hermanos Rodriguez. It's a Mexican circuit that has been in Formula 1. Aston Martin Vantage GT3 Evo, so new car for the GT3 class. Then Ford Mustang GT4, an Evo version of the BMW M4 GT4. Physics updates, a NASCAR refresh, and a lot of new things. But for me, what is most important, it will be the user experience with the new user interface, because that will be the thing that everybody will have to interact with. But while you're here, big thank you to all the members of the channel and also all the subscribers. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. I'm also trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. I'm not very far, but your help will be appreciated. Thank you. This new update is all about streamlining your experience without knowing all of the keybinds that you might need to know. For example, if you want to change your camera position for recording, using the camera tool is already here. So just press it instead of using Control K, I believe, and you can do all of your stuff. And it's this kind of stuff that carries over to where you're going to spend a lot of time, either in the garage or in the settings. For example, in the garage, you can have a look at the settings we have here for the setup. It's far easier. In most cases, you don't really need to scroll much. It makes it easier to look at, and the change in colors does help a lot of not burning your eyes when you're looking through all of this. I like it very much. Everything is very well laid out. It's very similar, but it makes it, in my opinion, feel a little bit faster to use. And inside the settings, it's the same thing as before. I do have a big nitpick with the user interface that I've had for years. There's no way to add dead zones. If you just want to add a little bit of dead zone, either on top or on bottom, even if you do the calibration, you have to either go to the iRacing app, .ini, which will be on your documents, or do it on your hardware side. You cannot do it here. And for me, it is something that it's carried over from basically NASCAR 2003. And I don't understand why they can't add this. It's not really something that complicated. I think that the huge UI difference and something as simple as that wasn't added. But you do you. For driving settings or keybinds or interface of all of that, it's even you can do the scrolling, but they have now these quick press points where that'll take you exactly to the controls. They'll take you to your driver's view, so you can change your positioning, you can change your FOV and all of that. Same with keybinds. So you don't need to try to figure out where the stuff is. You go just directly, let's talk about the spotter. It goes to the spotter. If you want to talk about voice chat, you go to voice chat. Same thing with interface. You can have a look at now easier with the UI scaling. Instead of using the control, then it will be page up and page down, I believe. You can change everything over here. And then on the display, exactly the same thing. Resolution scaling, AMD is there only still. Though they have mentioned that the DLSS implementation, they have a beta version. This was sent, I believe, last month. They have a DLSS beta version for this, and it's working quite well. So personally, I prefer to run this natively on this game. If I add access to DLSS, I would use DLSS because, in my opinion, it's free real estate, free performance without sacrificing anything or much. And FSR for this game specifically, it will look completely horrible. Also, one thing that I like is that now when you go over the top, you have on the right side the indication of which one that actually requires a restart without, having just that small bubble. Everything is there, very easy to read. And, I think that what they did, it's incredibly easy, streamlined. It feels definitely more streamlined, especially here on the graphics. When you go to the graphics section, if you remember those graphics sessions, that was a confusion. That was a mess. And for this, I think it's far more streamlined. It's easier to understand. I believe they added a few more options here. And same for audio. One thing that I find is that this user interface is still a bit tragic, not as tragic as before for VR. It's easier to read because it's not as bright. Sometimes with some VR headsets, When it's too bright and you have dark text, it might be a little bit difficult to read. Not because it's blurry or anything, it's just the difference of contrast. It's a bit too much. This one reads much, much better. However, it's still not as easy as, for example, Le Mans Ultimate or Automobilista. But, you do you. One thing that I also noticed, both for VR and for a single screen, is that this new update actually improved my performance about 20%. I don't know what happened. It happened in both in VR and in single screen. And also a bug for the user interface in VR. If you start messing about with the user scaling or the UI scaling, one thing that happens is that essentially it will lock the user interface into a specific area. You cannot move the user interface around. I'm still trying to figure out a way around that. It's probably going to be patched. And you cannot interact at all with the user interface. But with this update, my VR performance increased tremendously. Probably something on the background that was configured. And single screen also improved, which for me is a big plus. Let's go inside of the car because this is where basically most of our time is going to be used interacting with the user interface. And the changes, while they seem small, they are actually quite significant. The first big change is the change of typeface or the change in font. It looks prettier, but it only does that. It's not just about looking prettier. It actually changes the way you interact with the user interface at a glance. That is super important in a sim racing game. This typeface is slightly wider, slightly easier to read, and they pair this typeface also with a small addition, which is the addition of that background. It's the subtle change in contrast. When you look at the glance, when it's using that big square, that small change that they did makes a huge difference in terms of readability at the glance. I know exactly, while I'm looking here, I know more or less where it is, and I go up and down, and I can see clearly that the box is changing. If I had to do some sort of addition before, I would need to actually look until I found the box. Over here, I know more or less where the box is, and I look there, and okay, the box is over there, and it's easier for me to read while I'm driving. That is, for me, fantastic. That also changes, the typeface also changes the way you interact with the tire pressures, but for me, the most important change is definitely here at the weather report. Now you more or less understand what it's going on. It's verbose enough. It has more than enough information at the glance that you know it's going to happen without even basically looking directly in that. If you want, of course, more details to see how the saturation of the track in terms of rain, you'll know exactly how it's going to be. But at the glance, I will always know I see yellow. Okay, it's going to be at least cloudy, which is fantastic. It can be sunny, but it's going to be more or less dry. If you see just gray, looking at that, likely it's either overcast or it's going to be raining. So now you'll have to start taking more attention. These small differences make a huge difference for me. And also one thing that is a welcome addition is when you have your car stopped, you can edit your UI, or you can reset, or you go back to the pits, which for me is absolutely fascinating. It's a very simple, all of these things are very simple changes that completely streamline your experience with iRacing, making it a little bit less annoying on the user interface part. And then for me, it was one big thing about iRacing that was wrong, and now it's basically mostly fixed, besides the thing of, adding dead zones. Content is content. You buy it if you want to. You don't need to interact with it if you don't want to. But user interface is definitely universal. It doesn't matter your discipline, if you're doing formulas, if you're doing ovals, or if you're doing GT3s like most times I'm doing in iRacing. And the changes they have made, I think they are much for the better, except for the dead zone, which they still need to add. I would say that this is a welcome addition to iRacing. It's still not my favorite UI, but these small changes, I think they make a world of difference in interacting with the sim. But I would like to know your opinions. Tell us below. Have a nice day.